All right, good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? Good, good. The sun is shining. It's spring. We made it through that last cold, which I really enjoyed. And now, for all you warm-blooded people, you're welcome. You can just be happy while I'm miserable for the rest of the summer. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and open up to Ephesians chapter 5. We'll get there in a little bit. And hopefully that little scratching noise won't happen again. I don't know what to do about that. Who were you the day you got married? Who was that man or that woman standing at the altar looking at the other on the day you got married? Like if you go through the houses of go through my house, you look at the very many pictures of my wedding day, you will find a young, beardless, dapper, skinny man who's giving his life away to a basic stranger. I mean, like now that I know her for 15 years, 2 years was not long enough. We basically did one of those no, I'm not a robot, internet terms and conditions thing. You know what I mean? I promise I read it all. I don't know. and what's funny is, as we were standing there that day, and I'm looking at her and she's looking at me, we're going, man, both of us are representing histories, paths traveled. I've come through all this, you've come through all that, and now we're standing here today together in front of God and man in holy matrimony, and we're saying, here's what I'm going to promise you today about forever. Today we are going to promise ourselves to each other for not just today, but today and forever. And what happens when you find yourself and get to the altar standing before that person you will marry is you are at the end of a 20, 22, 25, 30-year history, paths that you've walked up that have led you to this place right now. And marriage, just like the rest of life, is a today and forever kind of thing. It's not just about today. Our lives are never just about what do I want today, what I want right now, although a lot of it has to be with how am I going to live right now because today's the day you're living. But we also have to keep our eyes on the horizon and ask ourselves a question of what about forever? How are we going to make this thing happen to where not only are we together today, but we can make sure that we're together forever, because marriage is a today and forever kind of thing. And so every single day, no matter if you're married or on your wedding day, or you're preparing to get married, or you've been married for 10 years, or wherever you are, every single day we have the same two things over our head. How am I going to be the man or woman that I'm called to be today? And how can I live in a way that prepares and paves the way for forever? How can I live today that's honoring to God, but also in a way that gets me where I want to go in the future? What kind of man or woman do I want to be? If you're a young person, if you're not married, what kind of man or woman do you want to be standing at the altar? What kind of regrets do you want them to have? What kind of past do you want them to have? And if you are married, who was that person? What kind of regrets did that person have? What kind of baggage did that person carry? And then ask yourself this question, okay, starting today, what does the future look like? What kind of man or woman do I want moving on into the future? And we live in a world that tells us that we don't have to worry about these questions. We don't have to ask these questions. I'm not responsible to some hypothetical person down the road that I might one day marry. I have Mr. or Mrs. right now. I have a person here now, and that's good enough. And here's the question. Here's the deal. You are responsible. You are accountable to some person off in the future. And it's not a hypothetical person. It's a person, and for the vast majority of people out there, people are going to get married. It happens. I don't know if you know this, but people end up getting married. People end up at the altar, and they dressed up, and they got all dressed up, and they're as attractive as they'll ever be for the rest of their lives. And they say, I do. It happens for the vast majority of us. And it's not right to say that's a hypothetical person. It's just a person you don't know their name yet. And a couple years ago, we did a series on the family called Next Thing You Know, and we based it off this country song called Next Thing You Know. And he says this, you swear you're just staying single, and next thing you know, you meet a girl at a bar, and next thing you know, you get her laughing, it's 2 a.m., you're telling your buddies 3 months in, she ain't moving in. Next thing you know, you're saving money like never before, just to spend it at a jewelry store. And next thing you know, sunburnt on a honeymoon beach, and your left hand's getting used to that ring. And the next 2 or 3 years go, next thing you know. And for the vast majority of us, that's how it goes. It wasn't on your radar. You couldn't have predicted it. You didn't know how it was going to happen. Sometimes you convinced yourself it wasn't going to happen. And like that, you are whatever man you are whatever woman you are, and you're standing at an altar. And we're making promises about the future. And as you've gotten older in your life, you can probably know what I know, that as one chapter of your life is closed and the next chapter open and that chapter closed and the next chapter open, as you've gotten to certain landmarks in your life, you have probably thought things that I've thought. Things like, wow, I could have lived that last chapter a little better than I did. I could have prepared for this day a little better than I did. I could have made better plans and better moves along the way. Because marriage and life in general is a today and forever kind of thing. That every day we are walking representations of the paths that I've already traveled. And we're also trying to think about, how do I live today with my eye on forever? How do I live today? Making plans, making the most of my days so that I can have the future I would like to have. What future am I aiming at? And the Bible tells us that if we're going to do this, we are going to have to be careful how we live. We're going to have to make the most of our days. And I'll tell you why. Because the Bible does tell us how to live today. It's chock full of commands. It has commands about everything. It has commands about tax law, if you read the Old Testament. It has commands about, what to do on the Sabbath. It has commands about everything, and including marriage, and including relationships. And it has some things that tells you how to live right now, today. But those commands are never really the goal that God's aiming for. He's never really just aiming that he could have a bunch of people that he's coerced into following rules. That's not God's goal. God's goal is always bigger than that. And so when the Bible says things like the marriage bed should be honored by all, and the marriage bed should be kept pure, and you should not commit adultery, and there's no sleeping around, and we're not going to do that before marriage, we're not going to do it after marriage, that's what I'm looking for. And it says that, he doesn't say it to annoy us. He doesn't say it to bind us and lock us in a prison and keep us from living our best life. He does it so that we can have something greater on the other side. So that we can have something that we can go, man, I have taken care of my life, and I've moved in a direction I was aiming for, and I get to the next chapter of my life, and I can be proud of the man I am, I can be proud of the woman I am, based off of the way I've lived the days on the way here. And he's not doing it to annoy us, but he gives us these commands to help us know how to live today with our eyes on forever. Here's the deeper and greater and broader goal that God has for us. It says this, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. Make the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the day the Lord's will is. The goal God's aiming for as we live our lives is that we will live lives where we have made the most of the opportunities God has given us. That we can get through our lives and say, I did not waste whole chunks of my life just wandering and being aimless. I've made the most of the days. And this is what he says. And when we do that, he can help us understand how to answer those two questions. How do I live today? And how do I prepare for the future? How do I live today that will make the future something I can be proud of? And he says this is why we have to stay vigilant. This is why we have to stay focused when the days get long and we get caught in the middle of seasons and we don't know what the next thing is going to be and we don't know what's going on. Here's why we have to stay vigilant. You ready? Because the days are evil. Isn't that a fascinating way of putting it? What imagination comes to your mind? You imagine some sort of goblin or some creature coming out of the grass and he's powered by the underworld and, I'm the evil day and I'm here to sap your life away. No, that's not what he's saying. I think what he's saying is the days are evil in the sense that the easiest thing you can do with a day is waste it. The easiest thing you can do with a day is just let it sort of evaporate from your hands. You had this day, you had these hopes you were going to do, things you were going to do with it, and then it just kind of disappeared. I got busy. I was doing things. I don't know. I was doing this, and then something over here dinged, and I went and did that, and the whole day's gone. I was doing a bunch of stuff, and it just kind of evaporates. The easiest thing we can do in our lives is waste a day. But days become weeks. Weeks become months. And they grow. And we have to be vigilant about each day. And so, here's the deal. Here's the reason he says that the days are evil is because you can get to the end of a week and go, where did it all go? It feels like it's been stolen from us. And then you can get to the whole end of a chapter of your life or whole season and go, what was I doing in my 20s? What did I do that whole time? You weren't being focused. You let your days just kind of slip away. I can focus on that later. I'll clean myself up later. I'll do this now, but I'll get things straight later. Here's a meme that a friend showed me, and I quite liked it. It says this: adulthood is saying, but after this week, things will slow down a bit. Over and over until you die. That's adulthood. I know it's a busy season. I just got to get to Easter. Well, Easter was last week, Gary. I know, but there's summer coming. We got to get things done before summer. We'll get okay. You said that last year. After this, things will slow down. We have this sort of idea in our heads that says, this is just this is the odd thing in my life. The fact that things are so busy right now, things are so hectic right now, I can cut corners here because it's going to end and I can go back to normal. And it doesn't. Because the days are evil. Because the easiest thing to do is waste a day. I do this sometimes. I don't know if you do it. I'll go and I'll get on my calendar. I'll just write down all my appointments. I'll write down all the meetings. I'll write down all the events that I already did. Because I'm looking up and I'm going, where did it all go? Does anyone ever do that? Where you go back in your calendar and fill it in so you can figure out what it was that took all your time? How is that even a thing you'd ever have to do? The days are evil. You have to be careful because the days are evil. And if we're not paying attention, they'll just kind of evaporate out of our hands. And we'll go, wait, I wanted to spend all that time investing in my marriage, in my relationship with God. I had things and plans that I was going to be aiming for. And they just kind of, I don't know, it's gone. Companies call this mission drift. The idea that you have a target on the wall, we exist to do this, and we're gonna do it, and then slowly by slowly, that target just kind of starts moving off the back wall and moves over here, and you're still hitting dead center on that bullseye, but then one day you look up and you go, wait, why are we aiming over here? Why is our target there and not there? It's way over there. Because it drifted there. It slowly went. And God's going, you don't want to live your life in a way where there's just mission drift and you're allowed to just kind of drift off to the side because you're going somewhere. It's a today and forever kind of thing. And one of the things we like to say here at Foothills is this: God is not a tyrant, but a friend. One of the things that we want to live understanding is that when God starts talking to us about the ways that we should live, He's not talking to us because He's a tyrant. He's telling us because He's a friend. He's going, you got to be careful with the days you live because they'll just get wasted on you. And He's not telling us that to ruin our lives. He's telling us that because He's a friend. And I'll give you an example of how this works. Imagine you come to me and there's some sort of speed bump that your marriage keeps hitting and you kind of go, Gary, there's something happening in our marriage and something happens and then we just start fighting and bickering about something and we don't really know what's causing it. Maybe we're too close in, so what we're going to do, will you just come and kind of observe us, just come to dinner and see what we're like, how we interact with each other? Will you just kind of talk to us and see what you see? And I come to dinner and now it's like, I'm going to come watch you have a marriage. Great. And so I'm there and I'm at dinner with you guys and I go, and it comes time for me to tell you what's going on. And I go, listen, you're doing a great job. Okay, I got to do that whole sandwich thing, otherwise you won't hear the critique. Anyways, so I go, here's what I've noticed. there's this one genre of comment that you make to each other. There's this kind of statement that you will say, and it kind of spurs her on to say this, and then that makes you want to say this over here, and then everything kind of spirals out of control, and then you're just kind of annoyed with each other the rest of the day. That's what I kind of see. And so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a law. Every Christian on earth has 10 commandments. You're going to live with 11 commandments. Are you ready? Thou shalt not say that comment right there. It does not exist. It's not allowed in your marriage. You're not allowed to say it ever again. And then you do the weirdest thing on earth. You actually take my advice. And you go, okay, let's do it. And then all of a sudden, these speed bumps stop showing up every day. And you're not getting as many fights as you normally are. And your friendship grows. And you're having fun. And you're laughing with each other again. And it happens for like 4 weeks in a row. And eventually your friend comes over and goes, what happened? What did you guys do? You guys seem to be so much more happy. Okay, that's the story so far. The question then the friend asks you that question. What's your answer? What do you say? My mean pastor has just put a bunch of rules in my life and ruining my whole life because I have to follow rules my pastor's telling me. Would you say that? Or would you say, I've implemented some rules in my marriage and it has set my marriage free. I've put some constraints on how I will act in my marriage, and it has allowed my marriage to flourish. That's what it's like when we follow God's law. That's what it's like when we listen to the commands of God and we go, okay, I will put these over me and under this ecosystem of how God calls us to live. My life, my manhood, my wife's womanhood, our family, our marriage will flourish under the admonition of God. That's the hope, because God is not a tyrant. He's a friend. He's a person who's hoping and willing and wanting to make the most of your life and my life, your marriages, your families, and my marriage and my family. And as we live under the teachings of Jesus, we can not only know how to live today, but also keep our eyes on the target of forever. It's coming down the road. But we have to be careful with those days. Got to be careful those days. Let's go back to our verse. I love this. There's this line that says, what we have to do day in, day out is make the most. Make the most of every opportunity. Make the most of the days that we have. Make the most of the time that we have left on earth. And this is a fascinating verb. It's actually a verb, the Greek could actually be translated to buy the day back. To purchase it. It could be, it's like saying, another way of saying it is, take it off the market. Sorry, this day doesn't belong out there anymore. It's not just up for grabs for anyone to take anymore. My days belong to me now. They are off the market. You're not in a position. You're no longer in a position to kind of walk in and dictate how my life's going to go, how this season of my life's going to go, how my days are going to be spent. No, I have bought them back. They're mine now, and I'm making the most of the days that I live. And as we learn to make the most of the days we live, the paths we will walk will be going in the directions of futures that we're hoping for. And so that as we get through this, if you're single, you'll get to the altar as close to, or hopefully as near the man or woman you wanted to be as possible. Or as you go through your early married years, you'll get to a new chapter as the man or woman. Or as you become empty nesters, you'll get there as the couple and the married people that you were hoping to be, because you bought your days back. You made the most of them. Because the time God has given us is truly a gift. And we never really know how much time we have. We never really know how long this season is going to last. We never really know how long this stage of life is going to be the stage of life we're in, day out, day in, day out, until it's just done. We never know. And what's fascinating, as a person who's been married for 13 years, has been sleep deprived for 10, and a lead pastor for 3, everything in my life that has ever run me ragged seems like the good old days. All of it's a fond memory. But in the moment, I'm going, will you just let me sit here for like a minute? Will you just stop, please? But we got to just keep our heads in the game. What is it we're doing here? What's the goal that we're doing as we step a little more forward every single day in our lives? There's an old story I love to tell. It goes like this. There was these 3 bricklayers, and every single day these bricklayers would leave their little homes and they would walk into the center of the city and they would start laying bricks. Every single day from dusk to dawn or from morning to nightfall, they'd just lay bricks and they'd go home, spend the night, and they'd come back out the next day and do it all again. And little by little, with sweaty foreheads and bleeding fingers, they built that wall, and it grew and got higher and higher. And day in, day out, they went out there and stuck bricks on a wall again. And one day, a traveler comes by, and he goes to the first man. He says, "Hey, what are you doing?" The man goes, "I'm laying bricks. It's my life. I pick up this brick, I slather some mortar, I put it down, and I pick up another brick. That's my life. Then I'm going to go home, and I'm going to come back tomorrow, and I'm going to do it again." He goes, "All right. Sounds like quite a life you got there." He goes to the next man. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm making a living. I got a family at home. I got a wife, and I'm laying these bricks, and they pay me to do it. And it puts a roof over their heads, and it puts food on the table. And I get to have a family when I go home, and I'm making a living so I can provide for them. That's what I'm doing. I'm making a living." He goes, "That's pretty cool." And he goes to the third man. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm building a cathedral. This thing started before I was born. It's going to get finished after I'm done. And for hundreds of years after that, people will come here and encounter the one true God. They're going to come here and they're going to see who Jesus Christ is. And they will worship under the spires of this cathedral that I'm building. And for all the years that this cathedral stands, this portion of the wall will be built by me. I am part of something bigger than myself. I am building a cathedral." And every single one of those men had the same day. They laid bricks. But they all made a different thing out of them. They all went and lived different lives with the same day. When Paul says, he starts talking about marriage in the book of Ephesians. He's talking about husbands do this and wives do that, kids do that. He's talking about the whole thing. And then at some point he just goes, and by the way, I just going to tell you this. It's a profound mystery because what I'm really talking about is Christ and the church. I'm really talking about how God interacts with his people, how God loves us and cares for us and lives for us and dies for us. And I'm talking about Christ and the church. And what he's saying is this, is that those of us who are lucky enough to be married, those of us who are blessed enough to have families and live our lives and have people to go home to and a husband to cherish and a wife to cherish, those of us, we're part of something bigger than ourselves. Marriage is not just something where two people kind of pair off and they go off and do their own thing. No, we're talking about Christ and the church here. We're talking about this thing that started before we were born. It's going to be there long after. And you're this part in the road that says this is the kind of society we're part of. This is the history of mankind. And for all of mankind, this part of the wall is going to be what you built. With the days that you had on earth and the days I had on earth. And Paul's going, as we get in the middle where everything's boring and the walls get tall and we can't see the horizon, we don't know what's happening next, those are the days where we have to be extra careful to make the most of the opportunities that we have. Because we don't know how long they're going to be there. We don't know what's going to come next. But we can take steps towards Jesus every step of the way. Jesus says, "Wide is the road that leads to destruction, but narrow is the road that leads to life." and all who walk the narrow road will find God. And here's the thing. Sermons like this are real frustrating because none of us get from one chapter to the next of our lives without getting some dings in our armor, do we? We've all taken it on the chin, haven't we? We've all looked back at past chapters and gone, man, I could have handled that better. I could have done this better. I could have prepared better. I could have lived better. That's everyone. That's everyone. Which is why Jesus had to come. He says, I love you. And I'm going to make the most of my life. And I'm going to put it on the line for you. And whenever we look up one day and go, what have I been doing? What did I spend that time doing? What have I wasted time doing? How did I end up here? Whenever we look up on that and go, how did this happen? God doesn't go, well, sorry, you weren't perfect enough. Get out of here. It's someone else's line. No, he says, I've paid your way. Get back up. Let's start asking the question again. Doesn't matter what's led you to this point. Let's ask the question again. How do I live today that's honoring to God and can pave the way for the future we're hoping for? And by the way, what that's called is repentance. Repentance is where we look up and go, oh my gosh, I've been wasting my time. Oh my gosh, I've been doing everything wrong. Oh my gosh, I've been living for myself. And Jesus goes, all right, get back on track. You're good. Dust yourself off and let's go. That's the game. And no one does it perfectly. But we have a loving Father who constantly says, that's okay. Come on. Let's do it right this time. Let's get back on the path this time. And one day, by His grace, we will find ourselves in the forever, in the future that we've been aiming for. And we'll say what my dad likes to say, I am the richest man on earth. That's what God's hoping for you. So you'll get to the end of your life and go, man, I am lucky that all of that happened in my life. Because we worship a God who is not a tyrant, but a friend.